Of the Planning, Land Use and Management Committee. I am joined today by Councilmember Englander. Our chair, Ed Reyes, could not make it today. I apologize for the delay in opening this meeting. Number one, our council meeting ran longer than usual and overlapped into this committee meeting. And second, we needed to clarify some rules before we started this meeting. So with that, there's been a request because of the number of people who are here to go to item number 5 first. So we could take up item number 5 at this time and ask the CLA to read that item into the record, please.
Sure, Council Member. Item 5 is a proposed ordinance being transmitted by the Planning Commission. It has to do with a zone change and height district change for a proposed project in CD 13 relative to a 225-room hotel.
Okay. Thank you and welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Henry Chiu of the Planning Department. What we have before you is a hotel project. It's located in the Hollywood Community Plan and it has a regional center commercial land use designation. The project site is presently developed with a 5-story vacant office building, and an application was filed to demolish this building and construct 87 residential condos. The applicant later revised the project to be a 16-story hotel building with 107 parking spaces. A public hearing was held in December of 2008, and the City Planning Commission approved the requested entitlements on March of 2009. Concerns such as loss of street parking in the area, hotel use, noise, loitering, negative elements associated with alcohol sales were raised at the public hearing, and the project was approved with conditions to address these issues. The project has received support from the Argyle Civic Association, Hollywood Dell Civic Association, Hollywood Arts Council, and the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. And the project has received opposition from 2 adjacent property owners, one which has submitted a petition and another individual stating the site is located on a fault line. No appeals were filed, and staff is here for any questions.
Great, thank you very much. You may want to remain there if you don't mind. We'll have some public speakers, and then we will open it up for questions and comments. Unless, Mr. England, do you have some now?
Just if you can give us a highlight on some of the conditions that were unique and imposed because of the concerns.
Well, the alcohol conditions, they're pretty standard because the hotel is proposing room service, alcohol sales for room service and for a lounge, so there's nothing unusual there. In terms of parking, the project provides code-required parking, so there's nothing outstanding or there's nothing that would show that there's a scarcity in the neighborhood related to parking. And there's typical conditions related to noise that are included in the addendum for the mitigated negative declaration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a few cards right now. The first is Piedmont Brown. After Piedmont Brown is Robbie Hunter.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Piedmont Brown. I'm the president of the Ironworkers, Local 433. The developer's been working very hard with the community. We're a local hire. I think this is a win-win situation for the community, as well as the developer, and as well for the city of Los Angeles, and I highly recommend it to you guys for approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Robbie Hunter. After Robbie Hunter is Ron Miller.
How you doing, board members? Robbie Hunter from the Building Trades. This developer in the Argyle Hotel have worked closely with the neighbors in the hills. They've done a 7.5-foot offset for neighbors. They have done a permitting system which have paid $100,000 for to alleviate parking for neighbors. They have invested in a local park. They have done everything, extensive outreach with the neighbors in the neighborhood. And this has been a great project to move forward. As you know, this is a terrible time for unemployment and construction. This developer did an agreement with the building trades to hire local workers, to use local contractors. And really, he's one of the people that have done an all-around great job on making sure the neighbors and the community get something out of this project as well. And we are asking that it moves forward here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. Ron Miller. After Ron Miller is Terry Gerger.
I'll waive mine.
Thank you. Terry Gerger.
Good afternoon. My name is Terry Gerger. I'm the past president of the Hollywood Dell Civic Association. We're a group of about 5,000 residents living within a half mile of this project. I'm here today on behalf of the Dell to once again thank Robert Green and Company for assisting in the acquisition of a 3/4 acre parcel of land. They contributed roughly one-half of the $162,000 funds required for the acquisition of the land from Caltrans in 2008. The goal of the acquisition was to maintain this land as open space and eventually convert it into a park for the community. We found out just last month that the state of California has awarded us a Prop 84 grant for $2 million, which will fund the construction of the park. Hopefully by the time this hotel is built, the customers will have a completed park in this densely populated city to walk to and enjoy. The applicant has been a partner to the community. They listened to our request to have ingress and egress on Yucca, and to our request to not include a nightclub in the facility. We believe this project is well suited for the site, and we support the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcel Porras from Councilmember Garcetti's office.
Marcel Porras, Senior Planning and Economic Development Deputy to Councilmember Garcetti. I'm here to speak in support of the project and to respectfully request the committee to approve the recommendations to move this project forward. As you know, unemployment in the city is around 13%, even higher for the construction trades. We feel that moving this project is important to get people back to work today. We commend the project team and the developer for working with our office and with the community as well as with the construction trades to look at executing a project labor agreement that will bring approximately 350 construction jobs to the site and to Hollywood to boost the local economy. Any other concerns that may arise from here until council, we look forward to working on those issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public comment. I have no more speakers cards. Any other questions or comments from committee members? No other questions or comments? Okay. Yes, sir.
I actually also have some volunteer conditions to submit into the record to the clerk, which I'll do so now.
Okay. Can we look at those first, please, before we move this item?
If those are just being submitted now, can you go ahead and go over them under the public comment as well? For the record.
Definitely. So the applicant shall contribute $100,000 to the city's to the Hollywood Mobility Trust Fund for the purpose of addressing neighborhood parking prior to the issuance of a building permit for the project. The applicant shall enter into a project labor agreement with the building and construction trade union for the construction phase of the project prior to the issuance of a building permit for the project. And then also a requested condition from the developer is, and from the council office, is that the term of all quasi-judicial approvals for the project shall be extended to the term of the legislative approvals for the project pursuant to LAMC 12.36.g, ordinance number 182106.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And were those items okay with the developer, with the applicant? You concede to those? Do not?
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chairman. Yes, we do. Robert Green from the Robert Green Company.
Okay.
I'm also want to let you know that I'm here to answer any other questions you have.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. My apologies. There were some other cards that were misfiled in our card box here under item 4. It should have been under item 5. We have more public speakers. Thomas Walsh.
Good afternoon. Thomas Walsh, President of Unite Here Local 11, representing 20,000 hospitality workers in Los Angeles and Orange counties. The 1800 Argyle Hotel sets a dangerous precedent after 10 years of responsible development in the Hollywood area. Examples are the Hollywood and Highland Project, the W Hotel, the CBS Columbia Square. Many of our members live, work, and visit in this area. When a project such as this seeks multiple approvals, including variances in height and density, the expectation is that there be community benefits in return. This is what the CRA would have done, but unfortunately it doesn't exist anymore. And therefore, this is the only place where we can have those discussions for a return to the community. The developer has agreed that the developer has argued that this is a limited service hotel, and therefore the hotel employees do not deserve a decent standard of living. But these hotels will come to dominate the market. Again, we want to express our strong opposition for this project, encourage the Planning Committee to delay this hearing, to continue it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Rachel Torres. After Rachel Torres is Jim McQuiston.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Torres. I'm a research analyst with Unite Here Local 11. I wish to echo the comments of Thomas Walsh and reiterate the fact that the mitigated negative declaration for this project comes from 2009. It's already 2012. There's been many changes in the area of Hollywood. I know I live a block away from this site. And unfortunately, those changes have not been included in the environmental review of this project. We also have concerns on the parking, on the alcohol distribution, and realizing that Hollywood is in transition. The renaissance that started a few years ago needs fulfillment. It's not over yet. And this project is one of many projects that we're deeply concerned about. We understand that the Hollywood Community Plan is expected to arrive next week. We would expect that this project would conform with those plans, and unfortunately a project that moves before that plan may not. So we would ask this committee to continue this hearing so that all of these issues can be fully addressed. Thank you.
Jim McQuiston. After Jim McQuiston is Kevin Bass.
Jim McQuiston. As you know, I live right across the street from this, right on top of the Hollywood Fault, which we expect to break any moment at 7.2. So we're always quite fearful of what will happen. We really want the city to make sure in the record that we've given them an Alquist Priolo notice, and then that will relieve the city of liability if someone gets killed in the impending earthquake.
Thank you. Kevin Bass.
Good afternoon, Commission members. My name is Kevin Bass. I'm the Assistant Political Director with the Painters and Allied Trades. We cover about 11,000 members in the Southern California area, and we're very supportive of this project. It's a win-win on many areas. This is a good developer that wants to do the right thing with a local hire program and putting a lot of our members back to work. And also, this is a project that's going to bring a lot of commerce and a lot of work to the area. So let's move this forward, and hopefully we can get the other issues worked out with the hotel workers, and it'll be a win-win for everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions to the staff. A number of projects, including this one, have old environmental review documents. I don't know, I mean, old is up for interpretation, but there have been a number of projects that have been revived, and either the M&D or the environmental impact report is a few years old. This one, we were told, it has an M&D from 2009. Should that raise any concerns about us now moving forward with this project at this time? To the staff.
I don't believe there are any concerns about this being a 2009 mitigated negative declaration. We reviewed the mitigation measures and the analysis, and they still remain applicable to what the project proposes, and the mitigation measures are what the planning department still uses.
Okay, and I know that for the planning department, this is not the first time this issue comes up. Have we made any attempts or corrective measures to put some time limit as to when the environmental impact reports or the MNDs are still applicable to projects that have been revived?
Mike LeGrand for the record. Normally we look at a 5-year window for kind of a freshness test, but due to the market factors, a lot of what changes are nearby projects that were analyzed. So many of the projects 5 years ago that were analyzed, the other projects that were neighboring them that we analyzed for traffic impacts never got built. So the environmental setting we're looking at today is usually a lot better than what we analyzed when many of these projects came through. But having said that, there's normally a 5-year window. We tend to take a really close look at anything beyond 5 years could still be okay. But we take a really serious look at in our environmental section to make sure that those mitigations in the projects and all the assumptions of modeling we did still hold true. And when in doubt, we just take a conservative measure to require a new environmental assessment form be completed.
The 5-year rule, that's more of an informal rule, and there's no local or state law that sets
Correct.
the
I believe
5
there
years.
may be some language in our city CEQA guidelines that points to that, but yeah, there is no steadfast law in CEQA that requires a certain amount of time. It's just more of a kind of a analytical test you go through when you look at the different mitigations and the environmental settings.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the Hollywood plan, which has come before this committee a number of times already and will come back again, if this project was proposed under the Hollywood plan, would it conform to the plan or not?
Well, the project has requested to go 6-to-1, and in order for the applicant to receive that approval, the Planning Commission needs to approve that. And so we have a project that went before Planning Commission back in 2009, which received that approval to go 6-to-1.
So it would not?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the plan says for this exact sub-area, but this was entitled prior to the plan going forward, but we would not make a recommendation that was inconsistent with the plan we're working on at the time. Mm-hmm. So although we may not have given the same entitlement envelope to the rest of this Yucca corridor, this project was analyzed in light of us undertaking that plan at the time of adoption. And this went through discretionary actions before the Planning Commission, and that's why it's before you today.
Great, thank you. And my final question is to the developer. There have been some questions raised by Unite Here. Are you still in discussions with them? Are you still talking to them, or have you shut off discussions? They raised a number of concerns here today. Are those items issues that you continue to talk to them about?
We've had 3 meetings with Unite Here over the last several years, sir. We are fine sitting down with them again if they'd like to have a meeting, but that hasn't been requested of us lately.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other questions from my colleague? He is not here, so. I think we're ready to vote on this item. If someone could get my colleague. Any other questions or comments?
No, and there's, just so you're all aware, there's a squawk box in the restroom, evidently. Yeah. So I did hear the call for the vote. And yes, we'll go ahead and vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So is that a motion to move forward?
It's a motion to move forward with approval.
So this item will move forward to full council, seconded by the chair, and with the conditions proposed, the additional conditions proposed by CD 13, and we would also request that it's not part of the record, but if the developer could continue discussions with Unite Here as we move forward. Any other? Questions or comments? Okay, great. Thank you. We could go back to item number 1, please. And as you exit, if you could please keep your voices down. We are running late in this meeting. We want to continue as swiftly as possible. Thank you. CLA?
Yes, council member. Item 1 is a CAO and Planning Department reports. It's a request of $990,000 from the Construction Services Trust Fund to update the zoning code.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Madeline Rackley, and I'm here from the CAO. As Mr. Mejia mentioned, this is a request to use funds from the Construction Services Trust Fund, which was to update the city's zoning code, which was last updated in 1946. As a result of the proposed revision, the Planning Department states that the new zoning code will use clear and understandable language and will include graphs and tables and charts that will help city staff and the public understand the code better. And I think you'll see some samples of that today. In addition, the new zoning code will be available in an interactive format on the internet as it's designed in this new format. If council ends up approving this request, the balance in the Construction Services Trust Fund will be approximately $5.5 million. The zoning code is used hundreds of times a day by planners at the construction services counters and by the public to answer questions about land use and zoning. Therefore, the zoning code is in fact an integral tool used to support work at the one-stop counters. Consequently, the CAO believes that this request is an appropriate use of the Construction Services Trust Fund because it will improve this important tool that supports services at the public counters. The CAO also recommends that the Planning Department provide a status report on the project in conjunction with future requests to use the Construction Services Trust Fund to continue the project in subsequent years.
Great, thank you very much. Anything else?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Alan Bell, Deputy Director of the Planning Department, and we have about a 10-minute presentation to provide more details about this particular proposal. We are very pleased to present the fruits of a one-year effort to present a recommendation to overhaul the city's zoning code. As the CAO indicated, the kickoff of this particular 5-year work program is a $990,000 allocation from the Construction Services Trust Fund to completely overhaul and revise the city's antiquated zoning code. This particular proposal is a centerpiece of the mayor's development reform strategic plan, and this proposal was also included within the mayor's recently released budget. This 5-year work program will result in 3 main products. The first would be a completely updated zoning code, and our proposal here is to make this an interactive web-based zoning code so that customers could go online and actually query questions of the code and answer the pressing question that most people have: what is it that I can do with my particular property? Our proposal would be to build upon the existing ZMIS system and to connect this revised zoning code to Build LA, which is a web-based development permitting system that is also included within the mayor's development reform strategic plan. So that's the first main product. The second main product are a bundle of easy-to-read, plain language, illustrated guides to the zoning code. What we have heard over and over again, both from the development community and from neighborhood councils, is the complexity of the zoning code is overwhelming. So New York City, for example, has developed a very clear, easy-to-understand guide, so we wanted to include that within this particular proposal. And then finally, the third main product is a unified downtown development code that would serve as a pilot for the new zoning concepts. I'm going to turn now to the financing of this particular proposal. We would propose to reposition the 6 existing staff that currently are working on code amendments for this particular project. We would hire planning, EIR, and then web consultants through an allocation from the Construction Services Fund, and then 7 new staff, including staff from the City Attorney's Office, structural engineer, systems and GIS staff, and this would be funded through a temporary increase in the general plan maintenance fee, which is currently 3% of permit and building application fees, and would go up to 5% for a 5-year period. So this project is an interdepartmental effort, and it would cost approximately, including the general fund contribution and these other contributions, approximately $3 million a year over the 5-year life of the program. It's a 5-year work program, but we are not proposing to deliver to the City Council at year 5 a completely revised zoning code. All the cities that we have researched, a project of this nature has to be phased in very carefully. So we would deliver, as they are ready, new zoning code amendments. So the first main product would be a blueprint for a reorganized zoning code. You got a question, council member?
Just a question on that. You said the $3 million a year from the general fund.
Not from the general fund. It would be 1/3 from the general fund, which is the existing contribution. So there would be no new net general fund impact. 1/3 from the Construction Services Fund, which is the allocation, and then the remaining balance would be through an increase in the current general plan maintenance fee from 3% up to 5%. So again, no new general fund impact, and we would rely upon the existing staff to manage the project.
And council member, that is how it's presented in the budget.
Is that clear, council member?
All right. But one thing with that, you said it's 3% on all permits, and so you're proposing that it go up another 2%.
Correct.
Does that sunset then after 5 years?
Correct. Okay. So back to the discussion about the phasing. As I said, every city that has tried to do this, you need to phase in the different ordinances. We would target implementing revised and streamlined processes and procedures because of the opportunity with downtown, with the regional transit system. We would propose a pilot program focused on downtown, a unified development code. And then because of the importance of the city's tax base and employment base, to target early revisions to the industrial zones as early products within this project. And then later on, new zoning designations, new citywide development standards. A project of this nature is so complex that we believe that it requires an oversight structure. We would propose 2 oversight committees, a blue ribbon panel composed of community stakeholders, experts, academics, industry leaders who would provide policy guidance on this particular proposal, and then a technical advisory committee composed of city departments and then also MTA. Public participation is key. Every city that we have researched is relying upon a very robust public engagement process. We would anticipate hundreds of community meetings that would be organized into 7 regional forums corresponding to our APC planning areas. Also, a project website dedicated just for this particular project that would enable stakeholders to comment on, receive up-to-date recommendations, and receive the latest information. And then also rely upon social media to get the word out and make sure that we have an appropriate public engagement process. Implementation. As I had said before, these ordinances will be rolled out over a 5-year period. On day 1, after 5 years, we would expect to have the simplified processes in place, and all new projects would be able to rely upon those simplified processes. The web-based interactive zoning code would be also in effect, and then citywide development standards. Further implementation would be approximately 2/3 of the city are open space, single-family, and agricultural zones. There have been a number of code amendments that have addressed these issues over the last 5 years. We would not propose any significant work or any significant changes to these zones, but there may be new simplified nomenclature and recommendations, and after day one, a simplified focus process to convert the existing zoning designations to the new zoning designations. And then the remaining 1/3 of the city, which are the commercial, manufacturing, and multifamily zones, those would be available through individual application process or through updated community planning. Now I want to turn to the second part of my presentation, which is just a little bit of history and background in terms of where we're at today. Los Angeles in 1908 adopted the first country's zoning ordinance. Many people don't know that, but we were the innovator and the leader in terms of zoning over 100 years ago. In 1910, the City Council established a 10-member 15 planning committee, and then 38 years later, up to 11 separate zoning ordinances have been adopted by the City Council. And the concern more than half a century ago was that all of these ordinances were so confusing and so complex that community stakeholders could not make heads or tails of them. So in 1946, they were consolidated into a revised zoning ordinance. And that was the last time, 66 years ago, that the City of LA adopted a comprehensive revision of its zoning regulations. Since then, there have been innumerable ad hoc amendments to the zoning code. On your left, you see the zoning code in 1946. In the middle is the code in 1978. It was still a reasonably sized zoning code. And this on the right is the zoning code today as a result of, again, of innumerable ad hoc amendments over the last 66 years. Next slide, please. One of the issues that we have found in our community engagement process are literally the thousands of interpretations and memoranda that have been written to try to figure out and interpret the zoning code. We call this the Phantom Code, and this slide illustrates actually just a small sample of a bookcase that is on the 7th floor of City Hall that shows the thousands and thousands of interpretations of our antiquated 1946 zoning code. As I mentioned before, we have over such a complex, cumbersome process. This is a small diagram of all the different entitlements that we currently have, over 70 different entitlements and processes and procedures within the zoning regulations. Next slide, please. One of the consequences of our out-of-date zoning code is the city's reliance on one-off or customized zoning designations, and approximately 60% of the city is covered by these special designations, which really are a consequence of the fact that our zoning code is not meeting the needs of the city and not meeting the needs of our community. And LA has had to rely upon this because of the fact that our zoning code is so particularly out of date. Next slide, please. So as a consequence of this legacy of ad hoc amendments, the Department of City Planning, I think, could be fairly characterized as a department of case processing. And this shows that more than 75%, approximately 2/3 of our budget, is currently allocated for the processing of applications, which is really a direct consequence of our antiquated zoning code, and only a small percentage, approximately 14%, is dedicated to advanced planning, community plan updates, and general plans. So that is what is driving the work program for the city, is our zoning code is so out of date, it doesn't reflect the vision and needs of the community. So LA used to be an innovator more than 100 years ago, but in the last 10 years, we have fallen far behind. Of the 50 largest cities in the U.S., 33 have initiated or completed comprehensive updates of their zoning code. And these cities include Denver, Miami, Philadelphia, San Diego, and Chicago. So compared to the 50 largest cities in the U.S., the city of LA has the second oldest zoning code. Only Cleveland, Ohio has a more out-of-date, antiquated zoning code than the city of Los Angeles. So what are the benefits of revising the city's zoning code? Certainly, probably the most robust and most informative benefit would be an accessible and streamlined code. The current code, which is so complex and cumbersome, really is a lose-lose. Both communities lose in terms of not being able to access these regulations, understand them, and developers also lose. But a win-win would be an accessible and streamlined code that is web-based, that includes easy-to-read charts and graphics, that uses plain language. Just as an illustration of what I'm talking about, the R1 zone, your typical single-family zone, under today's code, you have to go to 3 different sections just to figure out what those regulations are. You have to go to the R1 zone itself, then the general provisions of the zoning code, which is in section 1221, and then the exceptions from those general provisions, which are in 1222, and then reconcile all 3 parts of those code. A better way to do it, which is what Denver does, is to put everything on 2 sheets and to make sure that everything is within easy-to-read charts and diagrams and illustrations so that you don't have to rely upon dense text. Another benefit of a revised code are better community planning tools. One of the comments that we are constantly receiving from the community is that the code is not providing the recommendations and the tools that we need to make sure that we are creating the kinds of communities that our general plan says that we want. So the zoning code update will provide those better community planning tools. The third main benefit is revitalized downtown Los Angeles. Downtown is the economic driver of the region. It is poised for change. It is the locus of the regional transit system. So we believe that based upon all these factors, that we should begin with downtown Los Angeles. And then finally, better economic development tools. With the demise of the redevelopment agency, we need to rely upon zoning innovations to try to promote the economy, and the revised zoning code is an opportunity to do just that. It will make LA much more competitive in relationship to other cities within the region and across the country. It will provide predictability and certainty to all community stakeholders, both on the development side and then for communities. And so that's a summary of the benefits. Finally, I just want to conclude in terms of what the zoning code update will not do. It will not override any of the existing specific plans or overlays. It will not result in a wholesale upzoning of the city. It will require existing community plans to be updated, and the new zones would only be applied through the community planning update or through individual applications for those processes. So our recommendations today to the City Council, Plum Committee, are one, to allocate department first-year funding from the Construction Services Trust Fund of $990,000, to direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance amending the current general plan maintenance fee to temporarily raise it with a sunset clause after 5 years from 3% to 5% of permits and planning application fees. And then our third recommendation today is to authorize the Director of Planning. What's the funding scheme is in place to authorize the Director to prepare and release a request for proposal to select the code reform consultant team. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. I got a couple questions, if you could. First of all, I think this is a great thing, and it's absolutely well needed. In terms of the ongoing maintenance costs of the dynamic web page zoning code, there's going to be updates that have to be done regularly beyond the 5 years. Do you have an estimated cost of how much that would be?
2 parts of that answer. The second piece of the development reform proposal is Build LA, which is a web-based permitting system. So we would marry this particular project with that particular proposal.
And that would be funded.
And then the second answer to your question is we are very confident that with our existing system staff and GIS staff, and with the innovations that would be embedded as part of the comprehensive effort, that we would be able to maintain the web-based portal with the resources at that time. That would not require resources over and above what we currently have allocated.
And the Construction Services Trust Fund, you say there's approximately $5.5 million balance, and now you're looking at for roughly $990,000 for the next fiscal year out of that for this. How much is put into that? How much is raised in that fund? Is it a variable fund? It's obviously tied to volatility with the market and permits that are pulled.
Sure. Council member, the last few years, the fund has received about $2 million a year. Right now, there's almost $6.5 million. If council approves this use, there would be $5.5 million left. But the fund has been receiving about $2 million a year for the last several years.
And has there been a historic contribution to another program or something else that's been done with this fund that we're now going to be taking away, or is something that will be lost because of it that this fund was going to over the previous years?
The fund is used as departments come forward and make requests for it, and the council can decide how those funds are used. So the funds that are there right now have no designated use other than to support the construction services counters.
Okay. On number 3, it's got the Unified Downtown Development Code, which a new set of zoning tools for revitalization is a fantastic thing. There are certainly other parts of the city that need some economic incentives and tools as well. I see the need certainly for downtown, but I see the need in many other parts of the city as well. Is there a reason that we're not looking holistically at this, or is there a plan to then spread these out to other areas as well?
I believe we are looking holistically. The zoning code historically has always recognized the unique status of downtown. We have many zoning ordinances that only apply to downtown. We think that's a major opportunity area. But to answer your question, Councilman, we would also concurrently include, as part of the early phase of this program, the citywide industrial zones. Approximately 9% of our city is zoned industrial. That's the major opportunity that we see to jumpstart the city's economy, to make sure that we have updated regulations all across the city that will enable us to position the city to make sure that we're going to be competitive on an economic development basis.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and this indeed is very good news. Sometimes when we're so busy executing, we don't look back and to see the environment we're working in terms of rules and regulations, and this is self-policing on our part, which is very good, and I think this is going to help us get more consistent development, better development, and not scare away so many people from not understanding under what zoning codes we're working with. You almost need to have a separate master's degree in the LA City zoning code to be able to figure this out. And 1946, that's a long time ago. As you guys noted, we've had a lot of changes, things that may have applied. The last time we updated our zoning code may not apply today. I look at Boa Heights, for example, and some of the overlapping plans we have for that community, and transportation, for example. There was one time when the streetcars were the mode of preferred mode of transportation at that time, and now we're looking at planning for future. We're looking at some antiquated documents. But this is, I'm very excited about this, and particularly the focus on the downtown is important. I mean, as you mentioned, it's one of our economic drivers in the region. We have 500,000 people who go to work each and every day in downtown, and we need to continue the revitalization. We need to continue the economic development, and this will certainly help that move forward. One area that I am concerned it's separate from this, but in thinking of planning and what we're using, rules and regulations, I know some of the community plans are way outdated. One that we've been asking for, and I think in terms of fairness of those that have been paid attention to that, the Boa Heights community plan was moving forward. That stalled. I'm just going to request, since I am acting as the chair today and using that prerogative when the cat's away, the mice play. I'm going to ask if we could have a report on the community, Boyle Heights Community Plan at the next Plum meeting on May 1st to have just a verbal status of the update on where we are with that plan, if that's possible.
We'd be happy to provide that update.
Great. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make the recommendation then to go ahead and move forward.
Yep. It's seconded and without objection, so ordered. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and putting it in layperson's terms about what this means. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council members, there were a series of recommendations that were read into the record. You're adopting those as well. I believe Mr. Bell mentioned authority to release the RFP. I think there was also a request for an increase to the surcharge fee from 3 to 5%. And obviously, the vote on the $990,000 being requested.
My second recommendation was to direct the city attorney to prepare the ordinance increasing the general plan maintenance fee. So the city attorney would be directed to prepare and present to the council an ordinance amending the current fee.
With the sunset.
With the sunset, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll include that in the report. And also, we would request that this be an annual budgetary appropriation to the planning department to complete this, and that it be considered as part of the annual budget adoption process.
And also, council member, you may want to instruct planning to report back to this committee as to who was selected to be the consultant.
We have quarterly updates on the progress.
We provide quarterly updates, yes.
Okay, great. We'll include all those final recommendations in the report. With that, we'll move this item forward. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next item.
The next item, council members, is a city attorney prepare ordinance relative to shopping carts in the city.
What number was that?
Number 3, I believe.
It's number 2, council.
Number 2. Number 2. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. Tom Rothman from the Planning Department.
Gabriela Juarez, City Planning.
We're here to present an ordinance that was approved by Plum back in July of last year. This is coming back for a referral to the full council. It's a shopping cart containment ordinance that would provide a new development standard in the zoning code for all stores that provide shopping carts, 6 or more shopping carts. And Gabriela could go into the details of what that would mean.
The proposed ordinance requires merchants who operate a business that provides 6 or more shopping carts to their patrons to use any on-site shopping cart containment method of their choice to restrict shopping carts on their store's premises. We have suggested a few options.
If you could hold on just a second. I managing the card box here, have a number of speakers on item number 1. Yeah, well, we do have to reopen item number 1, is that accurate?
Yes, under the Brown Act, if you receive requests, you should allow them to speak.
You can sit there wherever you want. Thank you. Mr. Englander agrees to reopen item number 1, so ordered. I apologize for that. Rogelio Navar from the Office of the Mayor. You want to speak now or at the end of the card, sir? Speak now. Okay.
Committee Chair, Councilmember Huizar and Councilmember Englander. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Mayor's Office in support of the funding request for the Planning Department to commence their streamlining and updating of the city's zoning code, which we've heard is now 66 years old. Comprehensive zoning reform is critical and indispensable component of the city's larger effort to streamline and come up with a less cumbersome development review process. The updating of the code provides a streamlined review process, more accessibility by both neighborhood stakeholders and developers, as well as makes it more user-friendly. In addition, the Unified Code for Downtown will be a very important tool in helping create jobs, helping with business expansion, as well as helping expand the city's tax base.
The message that was sent here today and is being sent is that predictability, accessibility, as well as accountability is valued by the city, and the development community finds that very important, and we look forward to having this process commence soon. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Navarro. Ann Williams. After Ann Williams is Stuart Waldman.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Williams with the Central City Association, representing 450 businesses employing over 350,000 people across the Los Angeles region. On behalf of our membership, I want to commend the Planning Department for being proactive about fixing a statutory scheme that is truly broken. We hear from our developer members time and again the same story. LA's zoning code is ad hoc and cumbersome. In order to bring projects online faster, developers need to have clarity and certainty. And these might sound like fuzzy concepts, but they really do directly affect the ability of Los Angeles to attract investment dollars, which translates into jobs and economic activity. Investment flows to attractive, well-planned communities where the expectations on development are known. At the same time, the city is fortunate to have exceptionally talented and forward-thinking staff at the Planning Department, and it is time for a comprehensive solution to bring Los Angeles into the 21st century, and that time is now. Although we have a few questions about the proposed fees, we strongly support this long overdue code reform effort, and we're excited to continue our collaborative relationship with the Planning Department, and we look forward to further dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, council members.
Thank you. After Stuart Waldman is Sandy Sanchez. Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Stuart Waldman, president of the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, representing more than 370 businesses who employ over 100,000 employees. VICA strongly supports the department's 5-year program to comprehensively revise the city zoning code. The department's 5-year work program is pragmatic and beneficial, including critical steps to clarify and simplify the city's burdensome permitting process. Regarding the financing structure, VICA supports the reallocation of existing revenue sources, including the Construction Services Trust Fund. Though we believe construction service centers remain in need of enhancements, we recognize that code reform and simplification will contribute to the overall goals of the centers and the city as a whole. However, we do not support the recommended general fund maintenance fee increase. When VICA supported the cost allocation plan in 2010 that called for total cost recovery, we did so with the understanding that the department's entire funding needs would be fulfilled. We support the use of the trust fund and call for the city to use other existing revenue pools that will not increase the financial burden on businesses or impact service. Code reform will benefit all Angelenos, current and future, and therefore must be funded by all Angelenos. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sandy Sanchez. After Sandy Sanchez is Ronald Ziff.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandy Sanchez, Director of Government Affairs for the Building Industry Association. On behalf of the members of the BIA, which represents approximately 1,000 members collectively, I am here to comment on the zoning code revision. Land development in Los Angeles is complex and extremely time-consuming. Developers and builders must go through a very onerous and often unpredictable process. Because the zoning code updates have been done on an ad hoc basis, the development community is faced with even more complexity. The Planning Department's comprehensive zoning code update proposal would produce benefits both for the city and the development community and provide more predictability as well as a better understanding of the code. Since the development community is most impacted by the funding proposal, we would like to make a couple of requests. First, we'd like to request that the update be both a public-private partnership with input from stakeholders at every step of the process to ensure applicability, interpretation, and effectiveness of the code revisions are well vetted. Our experience with the current code could prove invaluable. Secondly, that a comprehensive schedule with milestones be established to ensure the project stays on track. The BIA requests regular updates and also be participating in the Advisory Oversight Committee to ensure that zoning code updates do not fall behind schedule and we finish within the 5-year period. The development community could be supportive of paying an additional fee or surcharge, but will not support any extension beyond the 5 years that have been anticipated. Lastly, we would like assurances that no additional fees or surcharges are added to this proposal. We already have many surcharges on our building permits. We don't need any additional ones. We have supported other fees in the past, but we cannot shoulder more additional fees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ronald Ziff, not here. Louis Krokover, not here. Mark Valianantos.
Hi, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I support this program to revise the zoning code. I have the skinny 1946 zoning code I checked out of the library before I came over, and it is sort of an outdated DNA for the city of Los Angeles. We're moving towards an era of having more transit, people wanting to walk more, bike more, have more mixed-use opportunities in the city, more sustainable land uses here. And we're somewhat hamstrung by having this code that is based on concepts from the middle of the 20th century. This 46 code was the first one to require single-family residents to have parking built on site. And combined with that, with having separate uses, you have people living far away from where they work and far away from when they shop, leading to negative environmental consequences. So while I support the fact that this revision will look a lot at simplification, clarification, making it accessible to the public, I also hope there's an opportunity for the public to weigh in on substantive changes. I think you should be reducing minimum parking requirements, looking at more mixed-use zoning, allowing things like neighborhood serving retail inside residential neighborhoods, doing a lot of innovative things that cities around the country are doing to get people out in the streets, out walking, living healthy lives in a healthy city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will Wright. After Will Wright is Jim McQuiston.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Will Wright. I work for the American Institute of Architects, and we're here to support this effort to commend the leadership of the Planning Department and the Mayor's Office in really pushing this through development reform. I have a couple of recommendations to how we can improve this process and tell the story with a little bit more precision to the community about really what's at stake here. This is an investment. This is an investment in the City of LA's future. We need to look and stress and monetize the return on the investment. We need to demonstrate to the community that this indeed will bring our city to a better place. We need to open up the dialogue and invite people to redefine the vision for what Los Angeles could become. This is the opportunity through the zoning code reform that we can reassess and reclassify typologies of land use. We no longer have the same mitigation concerns that we do because of all the other regulations, so we could indeed have a much more complex system that's more simple to understand and navigate through, which will save staff time, city staff time, and private sector staff time. So you might not even need the additional investment from the general maintenance fee plan if it takes less time to process these cases. So I think it's all well-intentioned, and we look forward to continuing to work with the Department of City Planning to make this happen.
Thank you very much. Jim McQuiston. After Jim McQuiston is Donald Lowe's.
Jim McQuiston, you have my statement. I think I've covered some things that people haven't thought about right now. As you know, I'm heavily involved in this kind of business, and I could say that most people don't understand the zoning code. I was over at Figueroa Street where a planning department member was telling people to go to his council member and he could put up an automobile repair shop in an R1 zone. And I thought, wow, you know, it's not only the public that needs some teaching, it's also the planning department. That means we really need to overhaul the planning code. But I don't think it should take 5 years, and I think if it takes 5 years, then we'll find out in 5 years we need to do it over. So we've got to figure out how to do it a little faster. And I think probably in-house is faster than trying to farm it out because there's always a problem of communications. So I think the planning department needs to do a little more work on their plan before we can actually put the RFP out. And I've told them that I'm willing to help, but we all have to think about it, and we all have to think about how we're putting the monkey wrenches in the machinery too.
Thank you. There's our 1946 phone ringing. Donald Lowe's.
I'm Donald Lowe's.
Original code calling.
I commend the department for trying to be farsighted. The comments were that things that are in place wouldn't be changed and that things would be simplified, but there are a lot of things that are in work, and I look at Mr. LeGrand to remind him that the last time I was here, the committee asked the CLO and the CLA to come back with a plan to deal with the ridgeline ordinance in 45 days, and that was some 45 days before the end of the year, and we're almost 90 days past that. We've never heard anything about it. We don't know what's going on with it, and we know that Eric Lopez and Jennifer Driver would be very easily put to work to complete the work on that program, and that we can get it underway so that it can be incorporated in these plans that we're dealing with. And I encourage that operation to begin as soon as possible. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That concludes our public speakers. Mr. Englander, any further questions?
Yeah, that did open up actually some additional questions with public comment. So maybe it's a good opportunity, or perhaps in the future we should take public comment before voting. No,
yeah, that's right.
We should have laws
I
about that.
got to figure out this box card and see how it works.
The box card thing.
Do we
the chairman's not here, so we're just we're winging it here. All right. The question is, how much is the total cost of the entire program over 5 years?
$15 million.
$15 million.
That includes the existing contribution that we get every year from the city council for the code study staff.
I see. And so, and it's over 5 years, so the total cost is a $3 million per year cost. And right now, the way you've divided it up, let me ask you this. Some of the suggestions that were made and increasing fees to cover this, well, in the long term, it does make sense. Is there a way to initiate at a minimum year one to take $3 million out of the trust fund and balance it that way to show progress that we're actually moving forward? Can we do some kind of staggered cost adjustment where, for example, instead of taking $990,000 out of the construction services trust fund, you can do the first year, because there's a $5.5 million balance in there right there. You can do the first year at a minimum, that $3 million for year one, and then balance it out with a different cost plan. So at least we wouldn't be raising fees first year one, and then we can show progress as well. I'm just wondering if it would make sense to do something like that, particularly in a tough economy right now, just so we can help until things improve a little bit. We're not just charging and raising fees and then in 1 year not really showing any progress yet because it'll still be in its infancy. Just an idea I wanted to get your feedback on. I don't know that it's necessarily a great idea, it's just an idea from the public comment and what was suggested and shared. What do you think about doing something like that?
I think there are just a number of different interests and a number of different work program items, particularly within the Development Reform Strategic Plan, that have to be weighed. For example, the Build LA initiative, which is the web-based portal system. It's my understanding that through the mayor's office, a proposal may come forward on that particular effort.
Councilmember, if I may too, and I think one of the issues you're hearing today is the department, because of the budget timing of this request and trying to get it on budget, we haven't had a lot of time to vet the fee issues. I believe working with CCA and VICA, we can give them a better understanding of the utilization of those fees, and hopefully prior to council, we could have them have a complete understanding and briefing on exactly the proposal for those fees. It's only a 2% surcharge on existing building permits that we feel many of their members are supportive of, that we've had private conversations with, and we feel that coming forward to council that you may hear a broader discussion about the willingness to accept those fees as a necessary way to fund this. We've been working very closely with the CAO as well as the budget team on trying to find solutions to this, but due to the fiscal constraints we have with the limited general fund money, there really isn't a lot of pools of money, and we're not raising fees across the department like you've seen many other agencies do across the nation. We're not raising our actual
So you've actually
fees.
you've had discussions with some of VICA's members, and they seem
Correct.
okay with the
Correct.
idea?
The actual developers who represent a lot of their constituents, we've had conversations about these types of fees and what it would raise on their general application, that 2% fee, and their understanding of the benefits that they would receive from a streamlined process, but also a process that's understandable for the neighborhood groups and the community groups. We feel that it is appropriate that the users of this service share the burden of paying for it.
Okay, thank you. I'd suggest VICA start talking to their own members as well then, and we'll go ahead and I'll support the draft and the ordinance as written. We can have those discussions certainly, and I'll meet with them separately, but prior to it coming to council. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move this item forward without objection.
Great,
Thanks
thank you.
very much. So ordered. And we could start up again with item number 2.
We're back. I think Gabriella was finishing up the details of the shopping cart containment ordinance. Were you?
I was about to get into the details. So going back, the approach is to propose one of 5 different options for on-site containment. One is the installation of bollards to act as a barrier to prevent carts from leaving the premises. Wheel locking systems which stop carts once they are removed from the store's premises. Attaching tall bars that prevent carts from exiting the entrances of the store. Fourth option would be having employees helps their customers take the groceries and purchased merchandise out to their cars and returning the carts with them back to the store. And the 5th option would be to have any other method or system that would efficiently contain shopping carts as approved by the Bureau of Street Services. Currently, state law prohibits cities from removing abandoned carts from the street for 24 hours. City staff is then required to monitor and watch each cart for a minimum of 24 hours prior to taking possession of it. And the state law further requires that each incident of illegal possession of each shopping cart be treated separately. For these reasons, few citations are written for shopping cart removal under the state regulation, as the city attorney's office is unable to prosecute them. On-site containment is far more effective and efficient than contracting shopping cart retrieval services because most opportunities for improper cart removal are preempted in creating physical barriers. On-site containment methods have yielded a 100% success rate in the city of Glendale, which is where we took our model from, as was our motion direction by City Council. Consumers have been paying for retrieval services through the increased prices over time. This ordinance proposes a 2-step approach. This would be addressing first new development regulation for the new and major remodels, and the existing stores and annual inspection program would be the second step that would happen through, I believe Council District 6 has proposed, help fund the fee study in order to propose an annual system by which Bureau of Street Services, Bureau of Sanitation, and DWP would together create this program of implementation such that there's an annual review and an annual counting of carts to make sure that they're all accounted for on a store-by-store basis. It would eventually come to the point where it would no longer it would be self-sustaining over time because these carts and the annual inspection would be charged to each individual store, and it would generate it would actually address containing all shopping carts in the future because they are accounted for on an annual basis. Staff is available to answer questions as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I do. Well, first of all, thank you. This is a long time coming. We have been battling this issue for many, many years, and these runaway shopping carts. In fact, we get a lot in my district in the wins that we have, particularly in Porter Ranch and Granada Hills, when one of these shopping carts are on the street and or on a sidewalk, and the wind gets a hold of it, which oftentimes happen, they can reach some pretty high speeds and cause some serious damage. And so we've always been looking at best practices and what can we do over the years, and I'm glad we're moving forward in some degree. I do have some concern, however, over this and some questions on the Glendale ordinance. Is every store, is it based on a number of carts?
Yes, anything that has 5 carts or more.
Anything that has 5 or more carts.
They tried to eliminate the burden on the smaller mom and pop stores.
Okay, and what about existing stores? Do all stores that have more than 5 carts currently in Glendale, do they all have to adhere to some policy?
Yes, they are all part of the program, and there is a staff member that monitors and coordinates citations, which they don't actually have any because they've had 100% containment.
And so one of the issues with the way that's written now or being proposed is that I don't see a couple things. One, there's no identification system on all the carts being proposed.
That's currently actually on the books now.
But they don't do it.
It would be, it's not enforceable because of the way the state law is written. So as part of the program, the annual inspection, the carts would also, that would be something that we could regulate as part of their annual inspection.
So in getting in the annual inspection, the only ones that would have to comply are new stores or ones that had a major overhaul or rehab or renovation.
Excuse me, yes, that would be the first step. As the fee study is completed, whereby they can analyze the number of stores and the cost it would take to be able to monitor and create this inspection program, the second step would then be able to implement, and we would be able to amend this ordinance once that's flushed through.
We're here today for just step 1. Step 1 is just for the new stores and the major remodels to now have a new development standard for those. As Gabriella explained, phase 2, as we move on through this and the funding gets secured through the council offices, we'll move on to the annual inspection for existing stores.
And the funding, you're talking about the benefit analysis, the funds to figure out how many stores are out there. And
we did do a lot of research on this. Gabriella did a lot of. It was a very difficult task to sort of come up with the actual number. Glendale has 40. That was they did their research and their due diligence. They had 40 stores. They were able to do this kind of in one shot. It's really not, it's beyond our means at the planning department at the moment to really tackle on all existing stores throughout the city that have 5 or 6 or more shopping carts.
We tried to query through the Office of Finance and their databases, and it was a number beyond our counting, our system.
And years ago, what we discussed the idea of when their business license came up for renewal, that there could be a question on how many carts, or we could wrap it into collecting the data so there would be virtually no cost of the city to go out and try to survey our inventory.
We could have that as part of it. However, what we've heard in discussions with the community is that they aren't very accurate with the number of carts, and so they might estimate.
My concern is that this gives a support. We've got to do something, but I don't know what the enforcement part of this is. I've got some questions on that. But what it really does, it's almost a false sense of security that we've done something. It's good for, again, new stores. We don't have a lot of new stores opening. I've got vacancies in my district. I know they're citywide. There are not a lot of new grocery stores opening in the city of LA. There's more closing than there are opening, quite frankly. It gives an unfair competitive advantage, I would think, as well, to a new store then that wants to come over and take in either an existing store or build a new store to the local store that's already there, not having a system in place. And so I'm not sure how that will impact the decision of a grocer to actually locate here or not, with an added fee of anywhere from $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 just to open a store based on a containment system, because it's not a level playing field. So I'm not sure if that issue's been addressed or not. And then the other part of that is going out there and having that enforcement tool, saying, okay, I'm not sure on, it just says on number 6, enforcement, notwithstanding the provisions of section 1226 of the code, the Bureau of Street Services shall have the authority and responsibility to enforce this subsection. How, when they come across a cart, do they know, did that belong to a new store, an existing store, the previous store? We have a Target on Balboa. We have 2 of them within a mile apart. And oftentimes their carts, for example, will end up right in between the 2 stores. And they're identical carts, and there's no way to really figure out where they belonged. How do we enforce something like that? If one store was just opening under this ordinance, and then the other one was an existing store that didn't go through rehabilitation or major renovation, how do we make the determination?
There's several answers to your questions. First of all, this was the direction that the motion gave us to proceed in terms of the methodology. We understand that it's a 2-stepped approach, so the timing is really dependent on funding and being able to fund the fee study and be able to create the analysis in order to create the inspection program. The inspection program we would structure currently under what Bureau of Sanitation already does with their bulky item program. So we already have the structure in place. It's just a matter of setting the fee and identifying which stores would then have to be would qualify for this program.
Is there an estimate of how much it would cost to do the analysis?
Without the fee study, we wouldn't even. We have no idea. It really depends on the number of merchants in the city and how long that would.
But I mean, and you're trying to fund that study.
Exactly.
Do we have an idea of how much that study would cost?
I believe we came up with $12,000. I think the council office has secured that money. I would defer to the council office. They've been more involved in that end of this particular project.
I think there's a representative from sanitation here who might be able to address that specific concern. But again, I just want to reiterate that, yeah, this is really the first step, and the only enforcement that would be required right now with this new development standard would be from the Department of Building and Safety. When there is a major remodel, they would just confirm that one of our prescribed methods of containment is included with this new project or this remodeled project.
I think it's great in concept. Yeah. I just think we're only halfway there.
Well, we are.
We
halfway
agree.
there.
This is a 2-stepped approach, and also.
But there's only one step that's listed. That's what I'm trying to get beyond. Is how do we? Is there any way to move this forward?
I believe a motion
with step 2 as well.
I believe a motion from committee and council would ensure that to happen. We also have the current approach that we have our Bureau of Sanitation and Street Services team that we've worked with in trying to create this system and this ordinance is that they do sweeps, so they would also be integrated into that as part of the enforcement. It's going to be phased in and restructured as we get to that second step.
Councilman Englander?
Yes.
2 years ago, this committee instructed the Bureau of Sanitation to do the feasibility study.
Right.
And that's pending in the committee.
That's pending.
Right.
And it's
the Bureau of Sanitation, I should say, we have not seen a report to this committee on that request.
Yeah, and I saw that. That's in the statement here that was done. That was requested 2 years ago. And
Correct.
that's what's holding up the other part of this. Do we know what's holding that up?
I don't, sir.
And there's nobody here from sanitation.
There's a representative from sanitation. I believe the representative from council member Cardenas's office could speak to that.
Please.
Miguel Franco, legislative director for Councilman Cardenas's office. We're working with sanitation. We're working with the management to identify the funding necessary for the fee study. Originally, we were informed it would be between $75,000, about $125,000, just to do the consultant to get the fee study, to identify the number of stores that have 6 or more shopping carts, and therefore get to the level that to fund the department to actually go and do the enforcement mechanism. We'll be working through the budget process to see if we can actually identify that funding so that we can move forward on the second phase.
Okay, so, and you're still looking to identify the money to do that?
We're working with the management of the Bureau of Sanitation.
But you haven't secured the funding yet?
Not exactly which fund it would come from.
Can we do it out of Construction Services Trust Fund?
I would defer to staff on that question. I don't know what the legal impediments would be to use that fund.
Anybody?
Get back to you on that.
Want to weigh in on that?
You may want to direct city attorney to report back on that.
Okay, we'll go ahead. I'll make the recommendation, if there's a second, to go ahead and do that, and then move this forward, but knowing that there's a study coming forward and it's fully funded, so we can get this done correctly and citywide, and make sure it's an even playing field. But I'll defer to the chair.
Thank you. On that item?
Yes.
I would ask that the Bureau of Sanitation keep fund and CD6 come back and report back on what the sources of funding will be.
Okay,
Thank you.
and then go.
Thank you. We have a public comment. Stuart Waldman.
Council members, thank you again. I'm Stuart Waldman. You know that. VICA respectfully opposes this ordinance unless it's amended. We recognize the core issue posed by abandoned shopping carts and are open to appropriate methods to ensure carts do not increase blight in our city's neighborhoods. However, the ordinance's single ADA-compliant option for retailers is installation of a wheel locking system. Beyond the installation cost of cart mechanisms, the electronic fence necessary for the system will increase the cost of opening or renovating a store by at least $40,000, regardless of the size of the retailer. As the threshold for inclusion is possession of only 7 carts, this ordinance will greatly impact small and medium-sized retailers. The California Grocers Association has offered an alternative that permits stores to hire a cart retrieval service. This option creates jobs and is far less cost prohibitive for retailers. As the city strives to eliminate food deserts and increase access to affordable household goods, the city must work with retailers to determine mutually beneficial solutions when possible. This is one such occasion. We urge the amendment of the ordinance to include cart retrieval services. Otherwise, VICA will be forced to oppose the ordinance as written. Thank you.
Thank you very
Just a
much.
quick question, if I could, to Mr. Waldman. Did you actually talk to your members this time on this particular one?
I talked to my members last time.
Okay, last time.
He was talking to CCA members,
Yeah,
not VICA
not VICA members. Okay, got it.
They're
And then,
behind me.
point of clarification then, what's being suggested though is not necessarily each store spending all that money for a locking system, but they have a list of items that at virtually no cost, where they can have employees help folks out to their car and other containment methods that they can choose, unless they get in trouble from not utilizing any of those menu options. Then they would be forced to have a locking system. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, thank you.
Sarah Sheehy. After Sarah is Ann Williams.
Hello, my name is Sarah Sheehy from the California Grocers Association. On behalf of CGA, I urge you to amend the ordinance to include a mandated retrieval system as opposed to a mandated cart containment system. Many of our members are good neighbors and already employ cart retrieval companies who look for abandoned carts, retrieve stolen carts, and return them to the store within 24 to 48 hours. However, many other retailers do not. And instead of punishing the good actors by requiring cart containment systems, we recommend the city first mandate a retrieval system for all retailers to see if that helps the problem. While we do appreciate your willingness to protect existing businesses in the city, we feel that requiring expensive cart containment systems at a cost of about $40,000 a store will create an unlevel playing field for any new store looking to come into the city. These containment systems, unfortunately, do not work. They are easily broken by customers, and the other options that staff was referring to, which is the bollards, we actually think that would put the store not in compliance with the American Disabilities Act, so it becomes not an option. And the staffing, which is the third portion of the ordinance, becomes too expensive. A better solution and a compromise is to require a cart retrieval system for all retailers moving forward, and we urge the committee to consider this option. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ann Williams. After Ann Williams is Miguel Franco.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Williams with the Central City Association. On behalf of our membership, I'm here to respectfully remind the committee that the vast majority of businesses that provide shopping carts as a courtesy to customers act responsibly and make every effort to contain carts on their own property. Businesses that provide shopping carts have a stake in the communities they serve. They want the same thing that the council members are trying to achieve with this effort: healthy communities free of blight brought about by abandoned shopping carts. Many retailers have already addressed this problem by contracting with shopping cart recovery services to ensure that carts are not released into the neighborhoods. We ask that the city not mandate any particular method of addressing this problem. This is a location-by-location problem, and stores and neighborhoods need to have the flexibility to implement strategies that are best tailored to that specific community. In addition, we want to remind the committee that everyone loses when shopping carts are taken off the premises. Neighborhoods become blighted and businesses experience theft. While we appreciate that some concessions have been made, we still believe that it is misguided for the city to penalize responsible businesses by enacting a sweeping ordinance that punishes businesses that are already working in good faith to keep shopping carts off our streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Miguel Franco from Council District 6.
Miguel Franco once again. I just wanted to thank the planning staff and department staff for all the hard work. This has been a long process. Just wanted to take you back a couple years. Council District 6 had a pilot program where the Bureau of Sanitation collected shopping carts on demand. We collected over, I believe it was 7,000 carts over a 6-month period, abandoned in the public right-of-way. They became a public safety issue. So, to say a retrieval system will help address this, where the containment system will prevent the need for a retrieval system. This will keep the carts on site. They will prevent them from becoming a flying object in the middle of the street. So, as the city continues to move forward and make additional policy changes, such as the single-use bag policy, the issue of carts leaving premises will become a greater issue, whereby people may choose to try to steal the carts and move them off premises. So a containment system will address this. It'll prevent it from going off premises. It prevents it from becoming a public safety issue. And that's about it.
Thank you. Can we, do you think it'd be sufficient to request that by the time that gets to council, you'll have a funding source for the Bureau of Sanitation as for the issue raised by Mr. Englander, or would that be too quick of a turnaround?
I'll work with the council member to make sure he sits down with Enrique Salivar so that we can address the funding issue.
And do you need that need the funding source before you implement this policy, correct?
The second phase, yes, the enforcement.
The enforcement. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve this as presented. Moving on to council with Mr. Huizar's, with the chairman's recommendation that a funding source be identified to be brought forward to council as well.
Right. Thank you. I was hinting, he caught it. Yeah. Great. Without objection, so ordered. Thank you very much.
So you're approving the city attorney ordinance and making a request to identify funding for phase 2. And you're making that request of the Bureau of Sanitation.
Yes. Thank you very much. Next item.
The next item, council members, is a proposed ordinance to regulate community care facilities in the city.
Public comments.
I'm going to stay here for this item. Again, Tom Rothman from the Planning Department. This is a continued item from the March 20th plum hearing regarding the Community Care Facilities Ordinance. I believe at the last plum hearing, the public spoke for a number of hours and the public comment period had ended. We submitted a report to Plum on March 8th that outlined some options for the committee, and the city attorney and I are here to answer any questions you may have.
Actually, I wouldn't mind doing a short reintroduction, since we've been away from this now for a little over a month. And I also wanted to, when I could, interject a few comments addressing some of the testimony that was presented about a month ago. I just want to remind the committee that there are several purposes that the ordinance is meant to accomplish. And one of those is to actually improve our enforcement capabilities in prohibiting businesses and boarding houses from R1 and R2 zones. Secondly, we aim to increase residential opportunities for the disabled by allowing licensed facilities of 7 and over in any zone. And finally, the ordinance proposes to restrict rental housing for parolee probationers. Some of the comments at the March plumbing hearing seem to believe the notion that this ordinance would disallow licensed facilities in the city of Los Angeles. And I wanted to correct this notion right now. The proposed ordinance widely increases residential opportunities for the disabled by allowing licensed facilities serving 7 and over as public benefits in any zone in the city. And just to refresh, licensed facilities are those facilities where 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week care is offered to people in the facilities. And the facilities include drug and alcohol treatment facilities. As we also know, licensed facilities serving 6 and under are allowed in any zone in the city under state law. So we already have that. We're proposing to expand that. As our code stands now, without the ordinance, there is no provision for licensed facilities serving 7 and over to exist in the city. And so currently these operators are having to apply for variances and other discretionary approvals. As a point of comparison, there is, that I'm aware of, no other city in California that authorizes residential facilities, licensed facilities for the disabled 7 and over in such a broad and welcoming manner as this ordinance provides. Getting back to some of the enforcement purposes of this ordinance, the proposal alters the definition of family and boarding house and adds a definition of single housekeeping unit and brings them more into line with other California cities. The change aims to make our current prohibitions on businesses and boarding houses in R1 and R2 zones more enforceable. To take boarding house first. Our current definition defines boarding house as a single dwelling unit and not more than 5 guest rooms or suites of rooms. The definition is from 1956 and does not accurately reflect the manner in which boarding houses are operated today. The proposal is to define boarding house as 2 or more people under separate leases. This is consistent with many other cities' definitions throughout the state. In fact, the most common definition is 3 or more people under separate leases, but the vast majority of cities define boarding house in terms of the number of leases. Additionally, we have a 2003 Attorney General opinion which upheld Lompoc's definition of boarding house, which defines boarding house as folks living under 3 or more leases. And the theory in upholding this was that the city has authority to maintain the quiet, non-transient character of low-density neighborhoods and to keep businesses out of low-density zones. As I mentioned, the proposal is also to alter the definition of family to people living as a single housekeeping unit. Our current definition of family is circular and can allow successful challenges to building and safety enforcement of use violations and consequently makes those enforcement actions vulnerable to legal challenge. Our proposal defines single housekeeping unit as people who share chores and household expenses and have chosen the members of the unit rather than having been assigned to the unit by a third party. And this sets up a clear distinction between a single housekeeping unit and a business. Similarly, other cities use similar phrases such as stable, non-transient members, sharing chores and expenses, and in which members choose to be part of the unit rather than being assigned by a third party. And I just want to emphasize that the bones of our zoning code are going to remain the same. We have prohibited boarding houses from the R1 and R2 zones since at least 1946. I mean, we saw that presentation earlier. We can go back to when the code was very small. We are not changing the bones of our zoning code. In contrast, most California cities don't even allow boarding houses in multifamily zones without a conditional use permit. We are one of the few cities that allows them by right, R3 in any denser zone. I also wanted to emphasize our reasonable accommodation procedure. And there is a concern on the part of those who either offer housing for the disabled or for those who are disabled. Our reasonable accommodation procedure is in the Los Angeles Municipal Code. It's been there since 2006 at 12.22A27, and it is there to eliminate barriers to housing. It allows the city to exempt the disabled individuals from certain zoning codes that are necessary for their enjoyment of housing. The city attorney and the planning department and the Department of Disability will be working together on processing the reasonable accommodation requests that we would receive currently and as a result of this ordinance passing. And finally, I mentioned briefly, the ordinance proposes to restrict rental housing for 3 or more parolees to multifamily residential zones and requires a conditional use permit. And with that, I would also invite your questions. However, if there are questions about legal defenses or things like that, then I would ask that I may ask you to bring them up again in closed session.
Thank you very much. Mr. Englander.
Yes. And I'm sorry, you said the public comment was closed as well. We spent how many hours last time on it? 3? 3.5?
About 3.5 to 4 hours.
Okay. I've been working on this since its original form, and it's changed quite a bit from the original form. And working on that, I think we started about 7 years ago when I was the chief of staff, my predecessor for Greg Smith. And the intent of the original motion is not at all what we've ended up with. It's far better. The intent from the original motion was really a knee-jerk reaction that we all had when we woke up to a proliferation of unlicensed facilities that were getting numerous complaints, calls for service from LAPD, from neighbors, from the fire department, from building and safety, from their actual occupants that were complaining. My firsthand experience that I've dealt with with some of these unlicensed facilities that don't truly operate specific programs, but they cloak themselves in all different types of reform and care for the disabled, and they're not. I've set out on a mission working with the community, working with stakeholders, working with licensed and unlicensed programs. We've met for many, many, many hours with many of them. I sit on the board of directors for facilities that actually have licensed facilities as well, like New Horizons. I've been involved in Tierra del Sol and Valley Village and many others that have homes for the disabled. And there has been a tremendous push to instill fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I think we saw the outpouring of concern, particularly from the disabled community, who would most benefit, quite frankly, from this ordinance, who would be protected much better, who would open the door
for the ability to have more housing, not less, that would also, to balance that, protect the character and nature of an R1 and R2 zone. And so I applaud staff for literally dozens of citywide community outreach efforts, meeting with stakeholders, neighborhood council members, community organizations, the media, council offices. I don't know that I've seen, quite frankly, an ordinance having this type of controversy because of misrepresentation put out there by some of the folks that either think they're affected or that are affected because there's some of the bad apples out there that don't want to comply. And that's what's been most frustrating. I applaud you in this. I want to move forward in this and move it to council. I ask for support in this. I think you've cleared up a lot of the concerns that have been out there, and I thank you for that, particularly Amy and Tom. You've done so much work on this, and I truly appreciate it. I know many folks citywide, and I'll go beyond citywide. I get called on this nationally on what is the city going to do because we need to do something as well. There's a growing problem out there. There's people in need, and it's not a matter of providing just more housing. It's the right housing and good opportunities with real programs and real care because people are taking advantage of. When we have unlicensed facilities that don't follow the rules and regulations and simply set up shop to make a buck on the backs of the disabled is just wrong, and it's got to stop. It's been pushed underground. We've got some of our own agents in our own city departments that drink the Kool-Aid and think that we should operate programs because it eliminates homelessness, even though those programs are probably, many of them, illegal, have no supervision, no checkups, nobody reporting on making sure they're getting nutritious meals, that they're clean, they're healthy, that they actually have programs, whether they're sobriety programs, 12-step programs, programs for the disabled, whatever those might be, that if we simply provide a roof over their head, they're safer. And I will tell you right now, many times they're not safer. In fact, they're taken advantage of not just financially. Many of them, I've heard, have been taken advantage of sexually, have been taken advantage of them in so many different sick ways that it's got to stop. We've got to peel back the covers on this and so people can see what it is and provide more opportunities for more of those people in need, which is, I think, what this has done. And I applaud you for that. There will be more people served in LA because of this, and more programs coming into compliance to make sure that they're clean, that they're adhering to the cause and mission of what they're supposed to be doing. There'll be more funding opportunities opened up instead of threats from federal programs like HUD and others because departments have not been in compliance with their other programs, so they're scared to do anything. That's got to stop. We've got to be more transparent. In the way that this was done, I can't think of another ordinance that's come through, certainly in the last several years, that has had as much transparency on this, as much stakeholder participation, as much outreach in weekends and evening meetings, publicized, inviting people to participate than this. And I truly appreciate it, and thank you for everything that you've done in bringing this forward and all your work on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Englander. On your last report from the Planning Department to this committee, you had a request that the council remove the parolee probationer definition and condition use from the proposed ordinance and resolve these issues at a later date. Are you still making that request?
Yes, I think that the amount of research that would go into that right at the moment might slow this process even further. We are prepared to start working on another ordinance that would address the issue of parolees and probationers.
On a question on that, is there any reason, not that there's a placeholder for council on this right now and not knowing full well when it's going to come, is there any reason for not moving it forward and we can bifurcate it later if at least it gives the opportunity to draft that language and try to bring it forth? Or would you suggest bifurcating it at this time
I would suggest bifurcating it at this time so that it could go to the City Planning Commission. They did not have the chance at that point to review it properly. Again, this ordinance was not adopted by the City Planning Commission. It was just moved forward to this committee. So I think that to give the City Planning Commission ample time to review a pretty substantial policy, it might be the right time now to bifurcate it so that we could do our research and bring it to the commission.
What kind of commitment can we get in time? I mean, it's been a long time in the process. When would it be heard then if we did bifurcate it?
I don't know if I can give you an exact date, but we could move fairly rapidly on that. We have a lot of our research already done, so it's not like we have to really begin this process all over again. We have done our initial research. We have our recommendations sort of formulated, so we could begin pretty soon. I would say give us 6 months.
If we bifurcate it, can we give instruction then for you to go bring it to the planning committee and then bring it back?
Certainly.
And rather than wait for it to come again back to this committee, so it's out of this committee, goes back to the planning committee?
Yes.
Then it gets scheduled here so we can move that part forward? Okay.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, we could bifurcate it then. And yes, Mr.
Councilmember Alan Bell, Planning Department. It's my understanding that since the City Planning Commission had originally considered the whole issue of parolee probationer homes, it was part of our original staff report. I believe that, and it was discussed by the committee, that the committee could decide to keep it in committee and not refer it back to the Planning Commission. So I think we could go directly back to Plum with this, if that would be the committee's wish.
Or if we could, we can move the entire ordinance onto council, and council can make the decision to move that element, that part back to committee as well?
On the parolee probationer?
Correct.
I mean, that would be up to Plum if they wanted to waive it out of committee.
Well, it's all one, is it not? Or is it two separate?
It's all one.
It's all one. So what I'm suggesting, again, if this committee moved it onto council, council can then, I'm asking the question,
yes,
can they bifurcate it and send one element back to committee?
The council could, because the city attorney's draft of the ordinance, which is currently before the committee, includes today the parolee probationer home recommendations.
Which has already gone to commission.
It went to commission, and then commission failed to act and therefore lost jurisdiction over the matter.
Okay, so then I would recommend we move it to council in its totality, and let the entire city council make a recommendation on this and weigh in on it. It's been a long time in the process. There's a lot of moving parts on the other side of what's going on as well that I'll hold back on because we're not in closed session. But we can always make that recommendation in council, so I would suggest we go ahead and move forward.
Okay, well, two things on my end. One is that due to a medical emergency, Councilmember Reyes could not be here today. He had asked that we continue this item. If I were to honor his wishes, I've been advised by council that should there be an effort to continue it with no second, it will remain in, it will deem that no action, which means it would go forward to council with no recommendation. Should a member of this committee, as was just done right now, request that this item be moved to council with no second, that is deemed no action, and it would move forward to council under no recommendation. So with that, being no seconds on either to continue this or to move it as is to full council, there will be no action by this committee, which will, under Rule 69, move it to council with a no recommendation. So we will, that's the results of this, as I understand it.
Point of clarification.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Can you say your name, please?
Yes, Deputy City Attorney Ken Fong for the record. Yes, that's correct, Councilman.
Okay. So that, point of clarification, so that's one way to go about doing it. And then if the council actually, if we took up a vote of the committee, but it was a 1-1 vote, it would still go on to council.
Yes, correct. Under Rule 69, it would go on to council because you failed to take action. And
So it would net the same result.
Well, but
With or without a vote.
Well, the practical difference will be that it will affect the vote that will be necessary in council. If it goes without a recommendation, it will require a 2/3 vote, which is 10 votes of the council. 10 members need to vote in favor of the ordinance. And if it's a recommendation from this committee, it would require 8 votes.
Can you double check that, please? I don't think that's the case.
Well, I believe we've checked that, Councilman. It's actually listed on the council agenda, the rules, and I can bring this to you.
That's fine. I mean, I was advised earlier that, so I guess if we wait another 5 minutes, I'll get a different piece of advice. No, but that's okay. All right, thanks. There's always different ways to interpret it, so I understand that. I appreciate that. So, okay, I'd still go ahead and make the recommendation that we do vote on the item and send it to council, but council can certainly vote it up, vote it down, send it back to committee and bifurcate or have those other options. But I would strongly suggest we actually do take a vote, though, and go ahead and send it on to council, whether it's a vote of the committee or it's a split vote or not, but that there's a vote of the committee sent on. Either way, it goes on to council.
Either way, it goes on to council without recommendation. Yeah, that's the...
Well, if both of you voted the same way, it would go with recommendation.
Thank you. So I think this will move forward without recommendation to the full council. And for the record, I do believe we should bifurcate the payroll item. There's a lot. I'd rather have our planning department and city attorney's office feel comfortable that you've thoroughly vetted that before you present something to us. And you're asking for more time on that one particular issue. I think it would make sense. So hopefully we could deal with that in council, or when we come to council.
So, Councilman, just to be clear, what are you doing as far as the parolee definition? Are you bifurcating it or keeping it as is in the ordinance and sending it to council? And like Councilman Englander said, let the council decide.
Yeah, what I'm ruling is that the report stands as is, the ordinance stands as is. We did not bifurcate it, we did not touch it. It's moving to full council without recommendation. Okay, and
I'll agree to that as well. So.
Yeah, and secondly, closed session. Do we require that in closed? I don't think we would need the next item under closed session unless there's any new information.
Yes,
wishes to share with us.
Yeah, why don't you make the announcement of the full item?
Okay, sure. The next item, council members, is item 4, which states the committee may recess into closed session pursuant to Government Code sections 54956.9 B1 and 54956.9 B3C to allow the committee to confer with its legal counsel relative to anticipated litigation which has been threatened in written communications concerning the community cares facility ordinance.
That we'll need to do.
And if you have any comment cards on this item, you should take them up now.
We do have comment cards on the closed session. Okay. Let's see, do I have, what item number is that again?
4.
Item 4.
4, right? There are no comment cards on item 4. Okay, what we will do on that item is move that item to council whenever the item for the other ordinance comes up. Okay.
All right.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, we have, there would be no planning report, director's report, next item? Nope. Next item, city?
Item 6, Councilman, which is Mr. LeGrand's report.
Yeah, there's no report. We do have a public speaker card. Donald Lowe's. Donald? Do you wish to speak? Not here? Thank you very much. And I believe that ends all our items.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you. May I help you, ma'am?
I had submitted a request for a public comment regarding...
You did?
Yes, regarding Brown Act
Hold on.
violations.
Here it is. Yes. What's Donald Lowe's, the one I have for public comment.
I'm sorry?
What was your name?
Autumn Elliott.
I don't have that.
Well, ask her to go ahead and do it
If you
now.
wish to speak, go right ahead, and we
We'll
won't
stay.
adjourn.
We'll stay.
We'll stay. Well, we won't adjourn the meeting. Go ahead.
I'm Autumn Elliott from Disability Rights California, and we and many others received notice from City Council's office that This item regarding the community care facilities ordinance would not be heard today. We were encouraged to spread the word among the community that it would not be heard today and to not show up. Despite that information, the Planning and Land Use Management Committee has chosen to move forward. That presents very serious Brown Act issues. It definitely violates the spirit of the Brown Act and raises serious questions about the letter of the law as well.
Great. Well, thank you, ma'am. Let me be clear on what just happened. Number one, these items were agendized. They were probably agendized. The items came up. Number one, there was a motion to continue by the chair of the committee, which is myself. There was no second. There was no action. There was a motion by Mr. Englander to move it forward to full council. There was no second. In other words, there was no action. The city attorney's office has advised us that under that scenario and under Rule 69, with no action, the item would go to full council without a recommendation. So whoever notified you that it would not be heard, whoever notified you that there will be no action, that it wouldn't be moved forward, you would have to take that up with them because this item was agendized. We got a ruling from the city attorney's office. I rule as a chair that we would follow that advice from the city attorney.
Yes, Deputy City Attorney Ken Fong, if I could just add, whenever there's a continuance, you never know for sure until the committee has acted, and it does take 2 votes of the committee members to take an action such as continuance.
Great. Thank you very much, and that concludes this meeting. Thank you very much.